Welcome to PG Excursions Travel with a Purpose, So You Want to Go to Africa podcast. I'm your host, Tanya D. Woods, attorney at law, and
I'm Lauren Lowery, certified international property specialist.
And welcome to a podcast for those in the African diaspora who want to visit their ancestral home, hosted by two sisters who know how to transform a simple trip abroad into a cultural bonanza.
Full of tips from our own travels to Africa, plus tips from expert guests to everyday travelers to ballers on a budget.
Let's get started.
Let's go.
Well, hello again. It's Tanya Woods and Lauren Lowery with PG Excursions Travel with a Purpose and another exciting episode of So You Want to Go to Africa? And this is where we get an opportunity to talk about our travels and with some expert friends of ours and their travels from all walks of life about what it's like to travel to Africa, so that those of you who've yet to go, now's your chance to jump right on in. And if you've already traveled, to get an opportunity to chop it up and break it down with some experts. Today, we are joined by Tashna Loy Donaldson. Lauren, tell us about Tashna.
Soror Tashna Loy Donaldson
Yes,
is a travel professional. She's a real estate professional and a travel professional who's traveled to over 40 countries around the world, but to 5 countries in Africa. And her point of view on traveling to the continent, being prepared, comparing prices if you're going to go to the Caribbean or someplace else, what would those sort of comparable sort of pricing and experiences might be? And she has a unique point of view because she is from the wonderful country of Jamaica. So she has a world point of view, a global point of view on all these travels. Welcome, Soror Tashna, to the PG Excursion Show. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much, Soror Lauren. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Soror Tanya, as well, for inviting me to participate. It's one of the best things I love to speak about is travel and how to get more Black people traveling. So I'm excited to participate.
Got it.
So let's jump right on in. Tell us about where you're from, where'd you grow up? So Lauren just let us know that you're from Jamaica. So tell us all about that, because that sounds really exotic for those of us who are here in the United States.
We're from Alabama. We're here in Alabama and Chicago. Jamaica is like we want to get there. What's up?
Well, I know, right? It's the place that everybody loves to go on a quick vacation and honeymoon and party. And I got to tell you, I understand why. So originally born and raised, I say I hail from Kingston, Jamaica. That's where I'm from born, right? And so migrated here to the U.S. January 17th, 1980. We remember the date. We call it Immigration Day in our family when we arrived to this country. Of course, for better opportunities. Our grandmother brought us here. So literally went from Kingston, Jamaica to Maywood, Illinois.
And West Side.
Right, West suburb girl, because I wasn't allowed to go to the city for quite some time. Because my parents weren't familiar with Chicago, so to speak. So grew up there, went to high school, Proviso East High School there, and then went on to Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. Love it, one of the best decisions I could have ever made. And then just subsequently after college, came back and started working at the firm you see here, represented CBRE, and started my career in commercial real estate. Unwittingly. It wasn't something that I planned to do. I just ended up in an interview after college for a job, and it's turned into a 24-year career.
So how did you turn all of that? We love somebody from Chicago via Jamaica and love the accent. Thanks for throwing that in there for us all. But when do you feel like you first got that urge to start traveling and working in traveling? So take us through that journey. What was it like for somebody who came from another country, grew up here in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois? But, that's a different trajectory. So tell us about, what was some of those early stirrings to travel and then begin working in the travel industry?
Well, I have to tell you this extremely funny story, because this is really what peaked it. So at about 9 years old, again, I'm originally from Jamaica. And so being the third of 3 children, when you migrate, things are a little bit different as you grow up and your family gets a little bit more stable. You tend to get a little bit more funds. And so I was about 9 years old, my mother said, we're going on vacation. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. We're finally taking a family vacation. It's going to be wonderful. And so she packs my little bags and we go to the airport and I'm like, oh, wow, we're going to Canada. Now you're going to see your aunt. And I was like, this is going to be amazing. And so we get to the airport and we're standing at the gate. My mother said, okay. And there's flight attendants that come over and they put that thing around your neck with all your documentation. And she said, well, your aunt will meet you at the airport in Canada. Wait, what? What do you mean? Just meet me? Where are you going? Because I'm like, you're sending me by myself at 9. She's like, yeah, you'll be fine. Right.
Oh my God.
Awesome.
Caribbean parents, right? They're like, you'll be fine. Go ahead. And so
that sounds like Mama Woo, by the way. That sounds like Mama Woo.
Absolutely does.
Your
For those of
uncle
you who
gonna
don't
come
know,
and get
there's
you.
a group of kids out there. You all know who you are, who call me Mama Woo, but that's exactly what happens. I am already painting the picture, Sora, of you with the documents. And for those of you who've traveled, you know, with small children and put them on the airplane, you know, things have changed a little bit recently, but you would put the child, turn them over to the flight attendant, and they'd have like this lanyard thing with all your stuff in it. Like almost like you were going on a field trip, but no, you're getting on an airplane going to an entirely different country.
At 9 years old, right?
At 9 years old.
Wow.
I can remember my first plane ride by myself, and I too did not know that my mother was not accompanying me, and I felt hoodwinked and bamboozled.
Yeah, so I had much of those same feelings, but I have to be honest, that's kind of what sparked it, and I continued to travel either by myself or with the family over the next several years. So about 16 years old. At that point in time, my father said, it's time for you to get a job. You've been living the life of Riley, right? Just traveling the world and having a good time between Canada, New York, going back home to Jamaica and other places. And so what kind of sparked it, I got to college and I said, you know what? I like to travel. And what does my life look like with travel involved, but yet still trying to accomplish some level of success? And so my degree is in international business. And with a minor in Spanish, I said, you know, whatever I want to do, I want to be able to do it on the global stage. And so that was my degree. So fast forward to me landing this job at CBRE, the first role being in the retail business. And I started the job on February 12th. Now, I'll never forget, my boss called me into his office on February 15th. He said, Tashna, do you want to go to Vegas for a week? Expenses paid on the company. What I do? What? I ran out of his office. I called my friend. I said, girl, we are going to Vegas. Pack your bag.
Love it.
And so that's how it started. And so I did pivot roles and then ended up in a role where I started traveling for work every week. And so I continue on and I still travel for work. And I've been with the company, like I said, 24 years. So 16 years on the road, pretty much all of the year. And then we took our first birthday trip. That's really what sparked it as well. We said, what do we want to do? And we went to New York just to have fun for a weekend. And I looked at my best friend and I said, we're going to travel the world. I'm going to spend all your money, but we're going to have a good time. And from then on, I literally just spin the globe. So we did a birthday in Ibiza one time, right? That's when people, and this is back in 2011. People were like, where are you going? Where is that?
Right.
Right. And so that's how things just kind of continued. And we just started picking different places. And, you know, we ended up in Malaysia, and then we would just fly from Malaysia, go to the Maldives, and, you know, just random places across the world, because I just wanted to see all of it. And as I think background of coming from another country and being here and getting on that plane at an early age, it just sparked all this curiosity. And that's how it ended up.
So five countries on the continent.
6 continents.
Africa. 6.
One left to go is Antarctica, and we're going.
Okay, so we're going to focus today on Africa. Yes, and that is what our listeners are tuning in to hear about. So you want to go to Africa. So 5 countries in Africa?
Yes. Well, 4 on main continent, and then Mauritius as well.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about Mauritius too. So because everybody pull out your map.
Yes.
That first trip to Africa. You know, so we know you've got these 5 countries, but we want to hear about that very first one, as they say, when you burst your cherry, so to speak.
Well, you know what? That was actually a very special trip because it was the year my father passed away. And my father passed away, thank you, January 31st of 2013. And my best friends and I, we said, well, what do we want to do this year? And I said, I want to go to Africa. And so we planned this wonderful trip. We started out in Johannesburg. And now don't ask me why I decided to rent a car. This is my adventurous side coming out. And so, we stayed in Joburg for a little bit, went around, had a good time. And I said, well, let's go to Sun City. So there's a movie Blended with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, and they highlight this hotel that they stay in. That is the exact resort that we stayed in when we went to Sun City in South Africa. It's also the hotel that Michael Jackson would stay in every time he went to Africa. Right. It's a beautiful resort. I think it's on 200 acres of land. And so I drove from Johannesburg to Sun City. Let me tell you, I don't recommend anyone drive in Africa because literally,
that's some serious stuff right there, girl.
They gave me a map that said turn by the barn and then left at the bush. Which bush? And where is this barn? Because there are no road maps. This is back in 2013, mind you. So we drove down to Sun City. We spent a week there just going on safaris to Pilanesberg and driving ourselves to different safaris that weren't even necessarily on the map. I remember getting to the entrance of this safari we were going to, and the gentleman said, well, just go inside. It's about a mile to the main house and they'll take it from there. What he didn't tell us that when we were driving to the main house, we were in open safari land. So I'm driving this car and here comes a zebra. Here's the panic on me, right? Because I'm driving and my friend is like, Tanya. And I was like, girl, there is a zebra right here. Right? So it was absolutely crazy. So it was amazing. We left Sun City. We went back to Johannesburg, drove back, and then we flew to Cape Town. I have to tell you, my most favorite place on the planet.
Wow.
Cape Town,
that
South
is so
Africa.
powerful. Now, I'm just going to set the stage for our listeners, for those of you who are thinking about a South Africa trip. Sun City is actually, it's just like it sounds. It literally is a city comprised of a number of themed resorts and casinos and hotels. It's located outside of Johannesburg, and it is right adjacent to an actual national park with wild game. So you would think that you're in a completely different place when actually it is a completely man-made empire, if you will, destination spot in South Africa outside of Johannesburg. And so you're coming from that and now you're going to Cape Town. So tell us about what were your impressions as far as where you had come from in this very, orchestrated, if you will, completely planned out community city to Cape Town. What was that like?
So now you see the real Africa. So when you land and you're driving into whatever destination you were going to, now you start seeing the zinc houses. Now that actually reminded me of Jamaica, right? Because in certain neighborhoods, people typically go to resorts, but when you're going into the real city, you're seeing how people really live. And as soon as I saw that, I said, oh, I feel like I'm home already. Right. And so we saw that and we continued our journey. We went to our hotel, which was a beautiful place, the one and only in Cape Town, just absolutely amazing. It's actually the hotel that Charlize Theron stays at when she goes home, because she's originally from South Africa, Cape Town. Right. And then we just started our tours. So between the Cape of Good Hope, going to Stellenbosch for the wine country, and just doing just private tours all around, and then just exploring on our own. We did our bus tickets. We would just walk down the streets, just testing the food. The people were amazing. Going to Table Mountain, right? Seeing where they held the World Cup. And it was just amazing to be in the space where Nelson Mandela was still alive and thriving. It was amazing.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yes.
That's nice. Yeah.
And just hearing people sing on the streets, you would just randomly hear people just break out in the song. And I don't know about you, but hearing South Africans sing, the Sowetans, like their music, now that is the original music. And when you hear it, you feel alive. And just to be in that space is amazing. So it's one of my most favorite places. If I won a lottery several times, I would live in Cape Town. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So tell us about the other countries, just to give us your highlights. Obviously we now know what your favorite was, and that was your first place. Yes. And so on the other side, something that a place in Africa, another country or another city that's very different in a different way that you appreciated it. Can you describe what that place may have been?
Egypt.
Lauren, that's your favorite.
Yes. And I say Cape Town is my favorite, but I have a lot because I love Egypt. And I feel like every Black person should visit Egypt.
Amen. And hallelujah, girl.
Egypt
will change your life, man. Egypt will change your life. The gods of the ancestors are like, where have you been? Where are you?
Yeah. It is an amazing place. And I think one of the things that Egypt is not this luxury place, right? It is not palm trees and golden roads. It is a city with culture, rich culture, and deep history of African roots. And I think that people need to understand that. Now, on the outside and exterior, it's a little bit crazy. I'm not going to lie. They don't have a driving system. So you have to have some good, strong, courage when you're in the cars, because it's not...
feel like that sometimes when I'm in New York, so I'll be okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very African in that way. It's very African. There's a
Yes.
lot. I mean, you've been to Kenya, you've been to
Yes.
maybe Dakar, Senegal. It's very chaotic. I mean, it's very much like all the other African cities. It's very
Yes.
much an African city as it
It
pertains
is.
to people walking and driving all in the same space.
In the same
And
space.
so many people.
With
So
no
many
regulation.
people.
Well, and I think that brings up a really great point. In the United States, we are accustomed to so much vast expanse in between people, right? Just
Right.
general, because it's such a huge, geographically, we just have more square footage per person compared to so many other places. And while Africa is certainly, vast, many parts of Africa are dense in some places and other places are very sparse.
Correct.
Right. So I would imagine that sense of, being in a big city, but just having people and cars moving around, in a way that's very different than what we might be accustomed here to the United States. I say it feels like organized chaos,
And
'cause
I would agree with you
everybody
on
else
that.
knows what they're doing.
And Cairo is that description of being in the big city, and then going to Luxor is
Yes.
where it's more sparse, right? You have more space, and it's not as chaotic, and it's definitely more laid back, but you have the beautiful Sphinx and other, national treasures that everyone should see. The history, I'm still like just so in awe of seeing the mummies that still have hair and teeth.
Yes.
Knowing that we were involved in the preservation of life thousands of years ago, that is still sitting here in our presence, almost
Exactly.
fully formed. It is absolutely mind-boggling to see. When I tell you the culture and the history that you see simply just walking through the streets of Egypt, and then going to see the pyramids. When you stand in awe of these structures that have stood for thousands of years before you and will be here after you, and you think about how they were built and the ingenuity that it took, right? Before the internet, before technology, and the way that they have created these, and to see it, it will change your life. And
it's certainly nothing like we have here in the United States, which we know empirically as adults, if somebody bothers to, even really ponder it, that we're such a young country, and we will always be such a young country compared to ancient civilizations and ancient cities like the ones you're describing in Egypt. But we just don't have a frame of reference for anything that's older than a building that's, more than
200 years old. We can't even fathom it, because the 200 years, because our building
don't even know what the
structures are so
materials
terrible, it's going to fall down, and whatever was 200 years is gone now. And because we don't appreciate, anything about history, we'll knock that sucker right down and be like, oh, well, that's done. We about to build something else.
And let's face it, nothing has been built in quite some time since the indigenous people walked the lands freely of North America and South America with the same engineering ingenuity that, still exists today. And which is why still in North America and South America, Central America, what do we go visit? The pyramids.
Right. We should be doing. Okay, so you've been to Egypt. Egypt was a good spot for you. What are the other 3 countries you went to?
Kenya, which I absolutely love. Again, we did the Masai Mara lands, and we stayed in the tent. If you really do want to be a part of nature, I do recommend the tent experience. Now, that being said, we were glamping. We were not just in a tent.
That's okay.
We did a tent too. We did a tent too. Where were we? We were somewhere close to Gambia or somewhere. We were in this tent, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Well, this is a resort that we paid money for, and why are we in this hut looking thing? Because of course I didn't do the reading. I didn't read where we were staying. I didn't look at everything closely. It's like I was quietly like, what
is happening? Yeah. But I will say it was very similar. Walls, thatched roof, but on the inside, indoor plumbing, air conditioning.
Right. It was nice.
So, no, I didn't have that. Mine was literally a tent. The only thing that had any structure to it was the bathroom. That was indoors. You had to zip in the tent, zip out of the tent. You could not leave your tent past 6 p.m. because you were literally in the safari land with the wild animals and rhinoceros and, walking by. And you had to get someone from the Masai Mara tribe to escort you to dinner from your tent and back. So it was a real tent with hyenas ended up on our back porch. And my best friend, I think she just started crying in sleep. I was like, are you okay? She was like, there is something on our back porch. So we called the tribe people. It was like midnight. We were in Masai Mara. We had to call back to Kenya in order for someone to answer the phone.
Oh my
Someone
God.
from Kenya then had to call back and reach the Maasai tribe people. And they came and they tapped on the tent and they said, it's perfectly fine. It's just some hyena and baboons on your back deck. Sir, sir,
No problem.
sir,
So
don't say it
No
like that.
problem.
So
Go
our
back to
audience
sleep
should
and stop
know.
waking us up.
Right. Our audience should know. Hey, you're in Africa, okay? So don't act like some baboon ain't just gonna come up and say hello. You're in
Yeah,
their
keep your
territory.
cool. Don't bother the people. I love it. So now we know a little bit about a lot about the trajectory, if you will, your sojourn from a young traveler at 9 to an experienced traveler who, until, not so long ago, made her first trip to Africa, who fell in love with not one, but all 5 countries in Africa. How did you then turn that personal passion into a professional one?
That's a great question. So it actually started right before the pandemic in 2019. And I think we were just coming from the Maldives Maldives and Malaysia. We did an MMA tour. So it was Maldives, Malaysia, and Austria. And I got home and I said,
Dichotomous.
I know that was very different. Austria just not
We'll
good.
have to talk about that later, mixing
I
your
know.
European countries with your Asian, with your Indian, and with
I
your
tell you, I
African.
spin the globe, and whatever in the path, we make it work.
There you go.
And so I got back and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to start a business. And my friends have been telling me to do that for quite some time because I literally plan all of our trips. And I just decided to go ahead and start it, right? To just stop thinking about it and just jump in and start doing it. And that's what I did. I leveraged my experience from traveling to, at that time, I think it was about 40 countries, and all the travel that I do for work as well, domestically and internationally, and coordinating those, and just leverage into a business. And I just reached out to my friends. I didn't do a lot of publicity. My friends know that I travel a lot. They look for me on Facebook or Instagram to see where I am most of the time.
Right.
And so it just became a word of mouth business. And, people just like, hey, I want to do this, plan it for me. And the business is TLD Lux Travel. And I named it that on purpose because I want people to have an amazing trip, but within their budget. Because I think one of the misconceptions of travel, that if you want to travel well, it has to be very expensive. It doesn't have to be, but we have to be very mindful of what we want to spend and what we're looking for within that price point. And I think that's where sometimes it's a challenge and a disconnect when people talk about trip planning, regardless of where they're going.
And don't you find that the more that you travel, or in general, the more you get, accustomed to being able to look for things, whether it be deals on hotels or knowing when the right time to fly is, what time of year to go to certain places, and then it gets less intimidating, I would imagine. I kind of liken it to, going to the grocery store. At first you're just like, wow, the grocery store is so big. There's so many different kinds of peaches and pears and apples. But you go enough time, you're like, I know I like Gala apples. I need, Bartlett pears. And I don't, I know what to get when I go into the grocery store the next time,
That's exactly what it is. And I will tell you, my best friend doesn't know anything. She just sends me money and she shows up at the airport on time.
Yes.
That's what happens, right? Because she's like, I know that you're doing the shopping, so I'm not worried about it. And that's exactly what it is. So depending, I always look at, okay, what is the peak season and what is the off shoulder season? And because you may get, a little bit of a better deal at that point. Now I am a person, I will be transparent. I do like my nice hotels and resorts. It's just who I am. I realize that's not a requirement.
Right.
It's not a necessity, because if you're there, you're there. And I tell people the front of the plane gets there at the same time as the back of the plane. So don't think you have to fly first class. Get right in the back of the plane and get that cheap ticket if you're on a budget. That's what we do.
Right.
We make it work however we can.
I just like to be able to rest at night after a long day of everything and partying at night. It's like the bed is major for me,
Right.
So
That's true.
I can do without some things, but I need to know that when I get back to my accommodations, I can lay my head down and burrow under those covers, or under my mosquito net or whatever it is, and sleep.
That mosquito net is very important, especially depending on the country that you're in. Ooh,
exactly.
Yes. I've come back looking like a prickly pear sometimes.
Exactly. Exactly. There's some must-haves. For me, it's a good night's rest.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that is how I leveraged it.
Yeah. How would you share, to tell those people, so those first-time visitors, what kind of advice would you give them, about sort of travel to Africa, what they can do, maybe some recommendations, pros and cons, what would you tell some of those first-time African travelers who might be a little concerned about, accommodations and environments, things like that.
I would definitely say speak to someone who has been there, and speak to a travel agent who has been there. If you're not sure, if booking travel is something that, seems a little bit daunting for you, which I know it is for some people, especially when you're traveling so far to a land that you've never been in, I would say use a travel agent, use someone who's been there. And I say that on purpose because the foundation of my business is getting an experience from someone that has been there. I've been where you want to go, and I can help you make those decisions. Sometimes speaking to someone who has simply not been there, just reading a brochure, well, that's a little bit different. And so I would say to you, make sure that you're utilizing the right person to give the information that you need, because it's a lot, right? South Africa is a huge country, and you want to know the right place to stay. And, where, say, South Africa does have a bit of turmoil sometimes. So depending on what's going on in the country, is it the right time of year to go when you're seeking to go? You need to know those things. And I'm always very conscious of what is your goal of this trip, of this vacation? What are you looking to do? I always believe in getting that information up front from people, understanding what their desires are. Yeah, because some people are going on vacation for different purposes. Some people go to relax. Some people are going to seek some knowledge and understanding. So if it's a knowledge-based trip, well, here's what you want to focus on. If you're looking to relax, well, here's what you would do. And so I try to get all of that information before I direct them to anything.
Even starting with your flight arrangement, right? And your accommodations before you even get to the itinerary of sites to see.
Oh,
But
that's first.
that's so critical. If you've got a person like me who really only cares about a comfortable bed, I don't eat mostly, a lot of things that other folks might eat. I want all the indigenous everything. So I could care less about a hotel restaurant at all.
Right.
I want to go eat what everybody else eats every night. I want that Sunday dinner wherever I am. So a hotel with a fancy restaurant, I don't need it. I just need a good bed. Yes. But, somebody else might, feel differently, like they might not be as adventurous with eating out, and street food and experiencing different restaurants that are not, 5-star, highly recommended, and so they want the comfort of knowing they can come back to their hotel and go to that restaurant and there'll be a burger and fries or, on the menu. So that's a really know thyself traveler, right? Type of moment. What are you going for? What kind of experience do you want to have?
And what's your budget? That is like the Panama question. What is your budget? And I mean a realistic budget.
A real budget.
No. And you have to separate your budget. And I tell people that you have to separate your budget for your flight and your accommodations. That's one. And then what do you plan to do? Because all of those things don't go into your flight and accommodation.
That's right.
To your point, Sir Tanya, like, what do you want to eat? If you're going to eat off the streets, then your budget can be smaller. Are you going to have excursions? Are you going to go out and go on tours? You have to factor all of those costs in separately. So then that constitutes your overall budget. But let's start with this. How much do you want to spend on that flight and that hotel? Do you want to fly first class? Do you really know how much first class really costs? Because that's another misconception. People are like, oh, I'm going to fly first class. And I tell some people, ma'am, no, you're not. You just gave me your budget. That is first class ticket for where you're going. You're not. Or
yes, I can put you on that first class ticket, but you won't be eating when you get there.
You won't have a place to stay because you just spent all the money on this.
You won't be lying down comfortably. So as you talk about that really, sparks a great conversation about not only know why you're going, but what you want to do and how that will factor into your budget. So it sounds like you're recommending that, you've got one column for just your flight and your hotel, another column for your excursions and your trip. I might, suggest our listeners also think about what's that third column for just spending and shopping.
Yes.
I'm a shopper. Lauren is a shopper. Some people, they've got a long laundry list of people they've got to bring stuff back. I'm kind of I only want to buy stuff for myself. So
I was a big old shopper. Bucket of money. She get on this thing and say she's not a shopper. That girl bought. Do we want to talk about Ghana? Tanya Woods. She had to get a whole new suitcase to get all the stuff that she got in there.
Me too.
As you should. So that's a whole nother story about packing and buying another suitcase when you get there.
Exactly.
I almost missed my flight from South Africa because I was still shopping and I was buying the pillows that are over there. Oh my gosh, I can show you. And I
I
had to
love the
like,
pillows. I'm in love with the pillows now.
Yeah.
like pull out the stuffing. Just give me the case.
Well,
Catch my flight. And I'm running with pillows flapping in the wind to get
love
to
it.
my flight.
That is hilarious. That is so
I'll
my
have to
last
talk
trip.
more about one time how the ship was almost leaving the dock and I was trying to get one last tea set. So that's another episode of PG Excursions Travel with a Purpose.
Exactly.
How
this
you almost
left
missed your
it
flight.
on the plane. Okay, like so we got
That
listen,
too.
it's a sad story.
So I bring that
Tasha.
up because you're right, Tashna. When you're budgeting and you're thinking about how much you actually have to spend, I always say, people save their money for those Beyonce tickets. You can save money to travel.
Yes.
I kind of think they probably run
They probably do. And I think the most important thing about travel is just expanding your horizon, your cultural horizon, having a view of the world different from outside of Chicago, right?
Yes.
Outside
Amen.
of your neighborhood or your block, whatever that may be, wherever you're spending time. We all love to be at home. You go on a vacation, you said it's good to be home, but it's good to be outside of your home and experience different people and understand the world from a different perspective that you sometimes only see on the news or hear about. When you can literally stand in someone else's shoes on that continent of Africa where life began, it changes your perspective when you come back home.
So as we're kind of wrapping up our time together, and I can't imagine that the time is just flying by when you're talking about things that you love and feel passionate about. But that's a great, kind of segue into, a conversation about, you're encouraging others to go and to visit. What would you say about investing as a realty, a real estate professional, a mogul, if you will, marrying these two industries together? What would be your thoughts and feedback on investing in real property, either as if you want to be a snowbird, if you want to, maybe buy property with some other people, if you want to think about retirement? I'm 55 years young, and I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't think about where I want to retire. And by retire, I just mean work permanently remotely.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I'm very close to that age as well, so I understand that conversation. And to be honest, that is something that quite a lot of people are actually doing now, which I'm happy to see, especially, our people of color, our Black people are looking to retire in different spaces. And Ghana is highly on that list of places to start buying property.
So we're hearing.
Because Ghana is doing so many amazing things. If you take a look at the international news, when they said we're going to stop giving you our chocolate beans, did you see that? And
I missed that. What happened?
They did. They decided they're going to keep their cocoa beans and start doing the manufacturing and production of chocolate.
A friend of ours was talking about that the other
day.
day.
Selling it. That just changed the entire dynamic of what that country is going to look like in the next 5 to 10, 15, 20 years. If you get in now, and it's creeping up there because of the things that are happening. Then that's an amazing place to retire, to work, and to just be in a wonderful climate instead of Chicago in the wintertime.
Amen.
So Tashna, tell us what are the top 3 things that we need to think about if we're considering investing in real property? What would be those 3 things you would want us and our listeners to think about if you're thinking about investing in real property in Africa?
Well, I would say look into the local laws, because you have to be very aware of what land ownership looks like in foreign countries. That's something that's very different than here in the United States. So people need to be very mindful of that, making sure that you're working with a local attorney there so you understand everything before you go in and just say, I'm going to buy land because it looks pretty. Make sure you have the right amount of funds set aside. That's very true. I had somebody buy land in a different country, and there were all kinds of things they weren't quite aware of, and then they ended up spending more money. So you do have to be mindful of, those things. So making sure you're aware of local laws, hiring an attorney, and then making sure that, the world-renowned theme of real estate is location, making sure that you're getting in the proper area of that country that you want to be in so that you're maximizing your investment.
3 great tips. And so for those who are listening, if you want to get started, who's the first person they should call after they call you, Tashna?
For travel in general, I mean, I could be a
for that investment. You've got folks out there who want to invest. So you told us who they should call when they want to travel, reach out to a travel agent or a travel expert. If someone wants to invest in real property in Africa after they call you, who's the next person they need to call?
Well, they do need to find someone that's going to be local to the market. So if there's some realtors here that I know are doing business there, literally, I have a sorority sister that is here that still has family in Ghana. So she goes back and forth and they do quite a few things there. So you need to find someone that's familiar with the market first that can make that connection for you. It's really tough in quite a few countries, and they do that on purpose to just walk into their country and start buying up their land, because then what happens? You have gentrification, right? And so they're very well aware of that in particular countries. So you want to make sure that you speak with someone that's from the country and then get connected, which is where the lawyer comes in as well, because those people should be vested in the country that you want to purchase the property.
You heard it here, folks. That is Tashna Lloyd Donaldson, who is breaking it down and chopping it up on all things Africa. So you want to go to Africa. Tashna, we are so delighted you shared your story with us about being a young traveler. You gave us all our tips that we need to know when we're traveling to Africa. Shared your stories from 5 countries. Amazing. We can't wait to see where you go next. And most importantly, you shared with us how you marry your passion with your profession and gave us some tips for those of us who are interested in either working plain or retiring in Africa and how we get started. Lauren?
Tashna, how will we reach you? How do our listeners reach you? Do you have a website, social media?
I do. My Instagram is I am the island girl. Facebook, I am Tashna Lloyd Donaldson on Facebook. My website is tldluxtravel.com. And then my email is tashnaloy@tldluxtravel.com. So quite easy to find. And of course, your listeners can reach out to you both directly to get my information as well. So yes.
Absolutely.
And as always, we'll have all these resources located right where they always are. Thanks to our fantastic Lauren Lowery, who always makes sure we get all the news that we need, all the websites, social media outlets. So thank you so much, Tashna.
Thank you.
Tashna, thank you so much. Everything will be in the show notes. Check out pgexcursions.com and .net for more information. And we look forward to some excursions planned by Tashna in the future. We will be pink and green down in Africa very soon. All right, ladies. Thank you so much. And we appreciate your time, Tashna. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye. The PG Excursions podcast is sponsored by FP Commercial Advisors, global investment consulting for professionals. Thanks for listening to the PG Excursions podcast. Please remember, subscribe at pgexcursions.net. Check us out also at pgexcursions.us.